Hi, my name's Rachel Godfrey Wood, and I'm the lead organiser for Momentum. So, as you'll be aware, about 10 days ago, the Grassroots Voice slate won 5 of the positions in the CLP section of the National Executive Committee elections, which was a fantastic result. It was actually quite a lot better than what a lot of people had predicted. I think it's probably a lot better than what a lot of us predicted, people on the left in Momentum, in CLPD, and other organisations, and it shows very clearly that a majority of members want to see transformative change driven by the Labour Party. They want members to have a stronger voice in the party. They want democracy to be protected in the party and for it to be, a party of members and trade unions. So we got around 48% of the vote, which was a higher vote share than the combined left got in the previous by-election. So this is a really important fight back for the left after the disappointment, obviously, of losing the leadership election and all of the disappointments and the frustrations that we've been suffering since then. We did quite well with a ranked voting system, which distributed the votes quite nicely, so that was quite helpful. We also did quite well in other positions, so with Ellen Morrison won the disabled representative position, which was a fantastic victory, again not predicted by many others. Laura McNeill won the youth position, and we did very well in the Young Labour elections too. So now we're going to be holding regular calls after 4 NEC meetings to report back. There's one NEC meeting approximately, usually every couple of months. You also have committee meetings, usually a couple of weeks before each NEC meeting. So after each 4 NEC meetings, we're going to be holding these regular calls so that you can hear from your NEC representatives feeding back and reporting on what happened in the recent meeting. So the NEC, as you'll be aware, is very important to oversee governance in the party, to ensure due process. The NEC has a big change over very key processes, including making recommendations for rule changes at conference and things like that. Now, it's important to acknowledge we're obviously in a very difficult situation. We're in a minority on the NEC. That's the first point, obviously. So obviously, in a minority, there is a limit to what can be achieved. And we are facing, unfortunately, a very authoritarian crackdown against party members, against the left, against democracy in the party, against free speech. And that is something that obviously as Momentum and as the broader left, we are doing everything that we can to resist. So this is, tonight we've got Gemma Bolton and Mish Rahman. Those are 2 of the NEC representatives. We're going to be looking at alternating them so that other NEC representatives can report back in future. There's obviously the main thing that happened yesterday, which you'll probably be aware of, is that they walked out of the meeting at the beginning. And so Gemma is going to kick us off and explain why they did that.
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks very much to everybody who supported us during the NEC elections. We did have a really great result, and we're really looking forward to representing you in the NEC going forward, and for all your amazing messages of solidarity over the last few days is really, really greatly appreciated. After the undermining of the NEC's democratic processes in refusing to restore the whip to Jeremy, left reps on the NEC wrote to our new General Secretary around just almost a week ago, asking in the strongest terms that they reconsider the decision. And the left felt that we were left with no option but to withdraw from the meeting and take a stand against honoured the leadership's total disregard for the rulebook, disregard for custom and practice, and lack of respect for elected representatives at all levels of the party. So at this away day, an item was added to the agenda by the General Secretary without going through the usual channels of agreeing the agenda through the officers group. This agenda item was to elect a new chair and vice chair. Chair and vice chair is usually elected at an NEC meeting directly after annual conference, which of course didn't happen this year. The rulebook states that an election would happen at the start of each year, so the chair, Andy Fox, decided to uphold this ruling. The controversy came when the right decided to do away with the convention and put Dame Margaret Beckett into the role of chair and Alice Perry into the role of vice chair, which would replace 2 trade union representatives who held the roles with none, and ignoring usual practice of the current vice chair taking the chair role when the vacancy became available. And this comes in the context of the Bakers Union currently reviewing their affiliation to the party. And we have to see that this decision begs the question of what, if any, relationship Starmer wants to have with the trade unions going forward. By ousting the TSSA rep chair and then instead of replacing her with the Fire Brigades Union rep as who's currently the vice chair, they've brought an MP rep into the role. Are we a party of grassroots members and trade unions, or are we moving to a setup more like, say, the Conservative Party operates, where the PLP are the core decision makers, the Parliamentary Labour Party, that is, are the core decision makers, and we are sidelined? Trade unions have to feel welcome in our movement. We're a movement of working class people supporting working class people, and trade unions mustn't be minimised in exchange for members of parliament. I stood on a platform to defend party democracy. We all stood on a platform to defend party democracy. I'm co-chair of the campaign for Labour Party democracy, and we felt that we had to take a stand and we had to protest the undermining of this democracy in our party. Obviously, this was a bold move. It was not a move that we took in haste, and we are still working to represent members who elected us consistently through the channels available to us. And we hope that this decision sent a message to our leadership that the utter disregard and disrespect for elected representatives is something that we're not going to put up with. The leadership is undermining the governance of the NEC. It's censoring debate. It's ignoring our processes by doubling down on the removal of the whip from Jeremy Corbyn. This failure on the part of the majority to respect convention in one of our first meetings shows the meeting descending into pointless factionalism, and we withdrew in the hope of pressing a reset button and returning, hopefully, to a more reasonable environment going forward. I hope that fully explains some of the reasons why we decided to take this decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Gemma. Next, I'm going to bring in Mish Rahman, who's one of the other newly elected CLP reps on the NEC.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Gemma, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Mish Rahman, and I'm proud to be your representative on the National Executive Committee. I think Gemma's explained part of our position of what happened, and I think it's important for me to explain the chronology of the crackdown that's happened, which led to our walkout. I mean, as Gemma already said, the General Secretary didn't consult with the chair before putting the election of the chair and vice chair on the agenda, which is something that is important. The chair always gets to be consulted before being known what's put on the agenda, and this didn't happen. And then the leader's office lobbied to NEC members to put Dame Margaret Beckett as the chair instead of the FBU's Ian Murray, and obviously it has to be because Ian Murray was a co-signatory in a letter from unions condemning Keir Starmer's leadership of a lack of unity that he's shown so far. So, I mean, what has to be said is that we cannot represent the members which we have been elected to represent if the governance is undermined by the leadership. Any democracy cannot be top down. Unity cannot be in words only. It requires magnanimous leadership. It requires understanding, and it requires consensus. If you're going to bring together ideas, you need to be transparent and you need to be fair as well. I mean, we were lobbied by the leader's office to support Dame Margaret Beckett the night before the NEC meeting, despite it being usual practice for the vice chair to be chair and for the vice chair to be the new vice chair to be the most senior person in the NEC. So when people like myself questioned this, we're told that, come on, this is Margaret Beckett. She's highly decorated within the party, but our party is not the party of entitlement. It cannot be. There has to be due process. And obviously, all this hasn't happened in a vacuum. I mean, the sad truth is that it's only the latest in a series of crackdowns in recent weeks and months. I mean, we had Jeremy Corbyn being suspended, and then we heard stories of London Regional Board being prevented from taking a motion on a vote on a motion in solidarity with Jeremy Corbyn because the control of the Zoom meeting was removed. And then there's obviously talk of staff taking over the establishment of local government committees in London without elected oversight. Any democracy has to be democracy where people are held accountable. I mean, CLPs have been banned from passing motions on dubious basis. We've had tons and tons of emails regarding this. I mean, members being suspended for taking votes on motions in support. Jeremy Corbyn had the whip removed in spite of having been reinstated as a member. I mean, this undermined the NEC and the NEC panel, which was there, which unanimously agreed to reinstate him. Young Labour's chair, Jess Barnard, newly elected with a massive majority, she was told off for posting a statement, which was no basis whatsoever in the rule book to stop Young Labour making statements in support for Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, it's curious to see that the email she got sent even referred to the withdrawal of the whip being part of a factional dispute. There were moves by regional offices to run AGMs by staff. I mean, as I said before, there's no basis for this other than in CLPs that are in special measures, and very few are. So members have obviously tried to do and fight back against this crackdown, and by doing this, they've elected a majority of the seats amongst members reps on the NEC, with the grassroots voice clearly being the biggest slate, and the majority amongst the membership have demonstrated that they want members to have a bigger say. I mean, as I said before, Jess Barnard, who's the leader of Young Labour, was elected with a massive mandate, and she was elected with. There was a socialist leadership that was elected, being the main point. Regarding motions, I think that the CLPD and momentum motions are still in order, so they can be taken. There should be a link somewhere here to the CLPD motion. And then we've been inundated, and our email boxes have been clogged up with over 8,000 emails, which have been copied into the leader and the deputy leader and other NEC member reps complaining about the mistreatment, and then to demand the restoration of the whip to Jeremy Corbyn. And we can only fight back against this crackdown if we're united, and we can only be united if there's good faith amongst us within the party, and that good faith has to come from the leadership. That's why it's so important that socialists in the party are organised, because if you're not already, we really need you to join Momentum and get organised, because we really need socialists in the party who are willing to fight and crack down against this and to organise properly. Gemma?
Thanks, Mish. So as well as now representing members on the NEC, I also sit on to represent members on the South East Regional Board and Women's Conference Arrangements Committee. And I want to give an update now on the upcoming or plans for a digital women's conference in June 2021. As this was something on the agenda for yesterday, and it's something I've been doing work on and really pleased with the direction that it's going in. So women's conference this year that we just had was online, but it didn't have any democratic functions. It was basically, it was a coming together and it was pleasant, but it didn't allow members to voice their democratic rights and, you know, pass motions, whether that emergency motions as well. So it's really welcome that we're having a fully democratic conference, and I do feel it's the best we could hope for. There was talk of a physical conference, but due to social distancing, this presented some really obvious issues with being able to ensure that each CLP even got one delegate entitlement to go. I had concerns that one person travelling alone and then not being allowed near any of the delegates for the whole of the conference could lead to a really lonely occasion, really like the spirit of coming together that any of you who've been to a women's conference or an annual Labour conference will agree with me that they definitely have. And I raised that concern at Women's Conference Arrangements Committee meetings. There was also the concern that obviously those shielding wouldn't be able to attend the event, so we'd be excluding people. And there are concerns about it being safe. How would we look if our conference resulted in a breakout in coronavirus? So this event is planned for hopefully the 25th to the 27th of June 2021. Provisionally, the delegate entitlement will be the same as the last women's conference, which is 2 delegates per CLP, one of which must be BAME, disabled or LGBT+. Women's conference last year was the most diverse it has ever been because of that entitlement that was brought in. I think that's something we should be really, really proud of. But we always have to be looking at ways that we can continue to improve that. And one of those issues that I certainly identified and other reps on the WCAC certainly identified was that there was a lack of engagement of young women in women's conference. It was very much one age demographic, quite heavy. And this is something that we're working really, really hard to rectify. There's going to be a meeting of young women stakeholders, including the new chair of Young Labour, the NEC rep, myself, and hopefully a few others. And we're going to look at how we can rectify this, address this, make sure that it really is just the most diverse event we can possibly hope for going forward. Other issues that are coming up for the that are on the sort of plate of the NEC members at the moment is the new code of conduct. Obviously, a code of conduct for NEC members is welcomed, but we have to think about how the fairness of its application, the issues within it in stopping people from being able to freely speak and debate. That's obviously something that is a concern that we'll be looking at going forward and making sure that it is as fair as possible in its application. So I hope that gives you some oversight over some of the more important things that we're doing right now on the NEC. There are certainly 2 things that I consider most important, and we are still working with stakeholders across the party to make sure that we are most effectively representing your views, which would be more than welcomed. You can email us, you can post in the chat here, or you feel free to message me on social media. Thank you.
Yeah, please do post some questions for Gemma and Mish in the chat, and they will have some time to respond to them. Obviously, they're only just in post, but they are very committed to kind of taking up the priorities of Labour Party members, and this is a really helpful opportunity to kind of like be aware of what party members are interested in. So please do leave constructive questions in the chat box. And now I think Mish is going to come back.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Gemma. Yeah, so I mean, what we really need to establish is that our broader priorities of the NEC. So as I've said before, the NEC needs to have proper oversight over the staff, and it can't be the other way around, because in the end of the day, we're a functioning democratic party, and there has to be due process and fairness in disciplinary hearings, because large numbers of suspensions have been happening at the moment, and we've been inundated with emails from members asking for advice. In many cases, it's been unclear why people have been suspended, and it seems to be on a dubious basis, such as debating and passing motions. It's also not right that people being complained about are hearing about it first from the media. We have to ensure, and us as NEC members have to ensure, that due process and natural justice in all these processes, these disciplinary processes, happen. I mean, unfair expulsions cannot happen. So we're going to have to fight for natural justice to take place. Our overall commitment is to due process and to natural justice. So no matter which member, what part of the party a member is from, they cannot be a recipient of any kind of injustice. There has to be good faith, and the party has to be dealing with fairness. So looking at the party funding, the Labour Party is a party that's traditionally funded by trade unions and its members, and not by corporate donors. For me, it's very concerning that for the Labour Party isn't taking seriously concerns such as our comrades at the bakers' unions, who are currently consulting their members whether to remain affiliated or not to the party. And there is a seemingly lack of concern coming from the top and from the leadership. I mean, we're talking about a principled union whose members give so much to the party, and who, most often their members are underpaid and at the harsh end of Tory austerity. But for the leadership to not acknowledge this and to undermine the work that trade unions are doing, such as the bakers, and as we saw with the FBU, it's really important that we recognise the amount of work and how important members and trade unions and trade union members are to the Labour Party, and going forward for us. There's full solidarity to the Bakers Union and all trade unions. We have to represent the trade unions, and we have to represent the members of the trade unions, and they have to be a part of what the Labour Party is, and we cannot be succumb to corporate donors. Islamophobia. I mean, this is the Labour Muslim Network report found widespread Islamophobia in the Labour Party, and this has not received a direct response yet from the leadership, which again is concerning. The recommendations need to be implemented, and including a code on Islamophobia. Likewise, tackling transphobia. There's very little being done in the party. This Labour Party is the party of equality, but again, the silence on issues such as transphobia. I mean, we have to be outright in condemnation of any bigotry, and the Labour Party cannot be tolerated of it. I mean, there's other priorities for activists to think about as well going forward, because we have to organise for AGMs. We've been hearing worrying reports about efforts by regional offices to run AGMs on behalf of CLPs. To be clear, there's no basis in the rule book for offices to run AGMs unless a CLP is in special measures, and very few are. It's essential that members mobilise heavily for their AGMs and make sure that proper democratic practices are followed. And then not far away, we've got party conference. I mean, defending the democracy we have in the Labour Party is the key priority. Essential for members to organise, to elect delegates at conference who are going to oppose the rule changes, which are anti-democratic in their nature. And CLPs will be able to elect delegates starting in January. So members are going to have a right to have a say in party policies, and CLPs will have the chance to pass either a motion or a rule change, and delegates at conference will have a chance to support socialist policies such as the Green New Deal, which was campaigned for by so many grassroots activists and is so important in this day and age, and seems to have completely moved from the debate within the Labour Party. This needs to be implemented, and socialists must play a key role in getting elected as delegates for party conference and supporting these socialist policies. As NEC reps, we will strive to ensure that members have their say in policy matters and these matters are respected. And Momentum will also have a process so that Momentum's motions can be decided by members as well. So we've got to build power from the bottom up in local government, in local levels. We've got to make sure it's important to ensure that all fair processes for the transition to LGCs from current LCFs and fair selections, so all members have a fair chance of being selected. We've got to respect mandates such as AWS, especially where there is huge inequality in the number of women being represented at local level on all levels of the party. I think it's good that the party has a programme to support key workers to become councillors, and that is very welcome. But as we've seen, this is meaningless if there's a factional crackdown on socialists from participating in Labour Party process. Above all, comrades, the Labour Party has to act fairly, it has to act magnanimously, and it has to make sure that there's justice at all levels of the party. And if we can achieve that, then the party can go forward and be united. But at this moment, we're lacking in all three. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Fish, and thanks, Gemma. I suppose, I mean, a lot of questions that have been coming in, and people often say to Momentum is like, you're saying that you're interested in kind of party unity, but how are we actually going to achieve party unity, and how are we going to go about that in NEC?
I think we all know very well now that divided parties don't win elections. And we've seen that for the last few years obviously there's a short while until the next election, and there's a lot of time to rebuild, but that has to be with a good relationship with all sides of the party and all ideas within the party. What we're seeing at the moment, and we've seen Starmer remove all left wingers from his shadow cabinet. We've seen him remove left voices from leadership roles on the NEC. We're constantly seeing the suppression of CLPs that are considered to be possibly more on the left, whether that's in passing motions or seemingly attempting to run AGMs instead of letting members run AGMs for themselves. So it needs to be grounded in democracy. This is something I've always believed in, is that if you have a fundamental base of democracy within the party, then you can accept when you win or lose on decisions that happen within it. And that's what has to be built on going forward, is a platform of democracy and of members' voices as well, and of making sure that there are voices from all sides of the party being welcomed within that. And that means, will left voices be present in the shadow cabinet? Will more progressive voices that shape some of our best policies, the Green New Deal, of public ownership, will they stay or will they go? And will those voices stay or will they go? Will it be suppressed? And I think that is really important going forward. We were promised unity in our leadership campaign, and that doesn't mean squashing a section until there's only one section's voice remaining. It means bringing in voices from across different areas within the party and saying you are welcome to feed in to that platform and to that promise going forward.
Can I just add to that, Rachel? So it's important that whatever the leadership says is followed up in terms of actions. So I mean, we could talk a good talk, but at the end of the day, unless the actions follow, it's not going to work. So, for example, certain messages that we've been sending out as a party, abstaining on certain bills which are really morally wrong, and the Labour Party should be taking a stand against this, and to acknowledge that things cannot go back to the old normal is important, which we have done. But going forward, we haven't said, or we haven't displayed our ideas how we're going to fight back against the current normal and change things radically. So there needs to be a radical approach, and then the party has a commitment to win elections. By all means, we have to win elections, but we've got to make sure that we win elections and we do it properly, and make sure that whatever changes that we make actually radically change society. There's the elections coming up in 2021, and we've been told by many members that they don't have the energy to campaign in these elections, and these elections are really important throughout the country. And we've got less than 5 months till the elections, and we've had candidates dropping out because they're not motivated enough to stand for the party. We've had members dropping out who won't be campaigning, and unless we have this unity, May 2021 is important. We're gonna struggle to campaign. We're gonna struggle to win elections, and it will be really, really damaging for the party. So we've got to get our house in order ASAP. Bring everyone together, and by doing that, we're going to respect the members who are the life and blood of the party. And unless the members are respected, the members are the one who are going to do the heavy lifting. They're the ones who are going to campaign for us. So it is a two-way thing. It has to be sorted ASAP.
Thanks, Mish. Thanks, Gemma. Next question: how can we ensure that Labour does adopt a transformative policy agenda for the 2024 general election? Do you want to go first?
Me. So we are facing increasing crises, multiple crises. We're facing a climate emergency. We're in the middle of a global pandemic, although some of the news basically seems to all of this infighting seems to overshadow like the how awful the things we're going through is. We had the wildfires not that long ago. Like, we have to be radical. We have to be. Labour Party has to say, that we're going to change things in society, or, you know, or generations like mine, future generations, that, you know, even now, you know, we're going to be walking into a really different way of life going forward. So yes, we have to work to make sure that Labour remains radical. It keeps the policies that it had that were radical. That includes staying in the party and advocating for those policies at every level, whether that's in your branches, CLPs, party conference. It's constantly advocating for those policies and shaping the policy debate to remain where it has been, where, you know, in 2017, we almost gained government on that policy agenda after a decade long of our percentage of the vote slumping. It suddenly spiked back up, and that was after, you know, a coup the year before. It was the policies. It was the policies that did that. So we have to keep fighting for them. We have to pass motions in our CLPs. You know, you have to stand to be a delegate to conference. You have to submit things to the National Policy Forum. You have to join Momentum. You have to join CLPD. You have to help us prepare and keep fighting for that policy agenda going forward, because, you know, it's not gone yet. That's our last, you know, we've come so far over the last few years. Why walk away and just let people, you know, rinse through it? No, this was good. Let's keep fighting for it.
I think you cannot be transformative by stealth. You have to put marker down. You have to do it and make sure that you lay out what you stand for. I mean, I think at the moment the party is too ingrained in looking at how the polling is going, rather than how what kind of policies that we should be backing. So, as I said before, the party has to putting markers down. Although the general election is 3 or 4 years away, that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that we can't be talking about policy ideas. We can't be talking about the transformative changes that we want to do, and we can't be ingraining our policies into the minds of people. We're not going to just turn up to an election with a manifesto and say these are our policies and this is how we're going to transform it. If people don't follow it, I mean, look at the policy last time, such as broadband. I mean, I live in broadband poverty because the broadband quality in my area is really poor. But now people are talking about things like broadband, how broadband is important, and better broadband, and especially through the pandemic. So what we really need to do is ingraining these policies, these radical policies, and get people to get used to them, and based on the need and the importance of things. Because again, the socialist agenda is that we cannot go back to normal, and things can be very different, and we have to make sure that we are a democratic socialist party. Members are engaged. They provide the ideas. They do the lifting, and they make sure that the policy ideas that form from them are actually radical, transformative, and to make sure that we don't have to go back to normal. The old normal didn't work for us.
Thank you so much to Mish and for Gemma for joining us for this first report back since the NEC elections. As I said before, we're going to be doing these on a more regular basis, so we'll do it after the next NEC meeting. I'm not 100% sure. I should know when the next NEC meeting is. I think it's in January, but we'll let you know. So please stay tuned. And 7th of December, I'm being told, is when the next NEC meeting is. So we'll let you know. This is going to be a regular thing. It's very important for CLP representatives on the NEC to report back to party members. Please, 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 everybody, stay involved. If you're not already involved, please get involved. We've got the fight of our lives ahead of us. As Mish said and Gemma said, we've got annual general meetings coming up. These are really essential. We've got Labour Party conference next year. That's absolutely essential for influencing policy and also for influencing procedures and structures. So CLPs will be having loads of crucial meetings between now throughout the whole of next year. So if you're not already involved, please do get involved, and please, of course, join Momentum to help support this struggle. So thank you so much for turning out tonight.